Okay, there we go. Okay, so I feel extremely privileged, and thank you, Lori, for doing this very, very special day. I know that you know Leah and the Biren family. So this is an Ilui Nishmas for Aaron Moshe, Ben Tzvi, and Leah. So Lori Palatnik has, as we all know, famous Lori, who is a visionary in the Jewish women's world, is the founding director of Momentum, formerly JWRP. She is a world-renowned Jewish educator, speaker, writer, and media personality who has lectured all over the world. Lori has authored 4 books, Friday Night and Beyond, Gossip, Remember My Soul, and Turn Your Husband into Your Soulmate. In 2014, Lori was named one of the 10 women to watch by Jewish Women International in recognition of her contribution to Jewish women throughout the world. Hadassah named Lori one of the most outstanding Jewish American women of our time, and Izzy included Lori in its global Jewish 100 list for moving Jewish culture forward. In 2020, Lori was selected to light the diaspora torch at the national ceremony for Israel's 76th Independence Day. Lori lives with her husband in Jerusalem, and we are so privileged, Lori, to have you today. And thank you so much for coming. Thank you. Lori, are you there? I don't see you.
Yes, thank you, Naomi. I'm
Perfect.
here. Can you see me? Okay,
Perfect.
Great. It's a big schos to be asked to do this today. I thank you very, very much. And I hope it brings some comfort to the Biren family and to, I think that most people here on the screen have had losses. There's nobody who goes through life without losing loved ones in different ways. And so I just want you to have those loved ones in mind as I share a few thoughts about soul in the afterlife. Why did I start speaking about this? So I think some of you are from the Toronto area. I think you're from all over, but a lot of you are from Toronto. So my husband and I were privileged to start the Village Shul in Toronto's Forest Hill. When I first moved into the neighborhood, in the shadow of the biggest Reform temple in Canada and the biggest conservative synagogue in Canada, we're like, let's start a shul. So we were just like unpacking my boxes, and I got a call from my neighbor across the street. And we had a mutual friend, and I guess our mutual friend told her that I was moving in. And she called me up to welcome me to the neighborhood. And she's telling me about shopping and the schools. And then she got to the point. She goes, Lori, I was tucking my daughter into bed last night. And her daughter at the time was probably about, 8 years old. And she said, my daughter asked me, Mommy, what happens after we die? And she said, Lori, I felt bad because I had to tell her that according to Judaism, nothing happens after you die. Pause. I said, well, that's not what we believe at all. She said, really? What do we believe? So I sat down and I shared with her some of the thoughts I'm going to share with you. And I started actually doing some more research on it because of all the misconceptions that Jews have about their own Judaism. I think this might be number one. And why? I don't know about you. I did not grow up observant. And when my Judaism growing up was really based on whatever non-Jews do, we don't. They do Christmas, we don't. They do Santa Claus, we don't. They do JC, we don't. They do heaven and hell, we don't. But we do. They got it from us and they changed it. But we do believe in heaven and hell. We do believe in soul. We do believe in eternity. We believe all of these things. But why did we know about this growing up? Why didn't I know about it? Why did none of my peers know about it? First of all, it's uncomfortable to talk about death. In the book Tuesdays with Maury says he's dying of Lou Gehrig's disease. And Maury says many profound things. One was, everybody knows they're going to die, but nobody believes it. Another reason, and I'm sure some of you have been in situations where you're at a Shiva and there's a lot of chatter, but everybody's talking about everything or anything except for what just happened about death. Because if we don't talk about it, maybe it won't happen. But we all know it will, it does, and we need to know and to understand. So first, none of this makes sense unless we live with the reality and the knowledge that we're not just bodies, but we're souls. We have a body, but we are a soul. And sometimes we can forget. We can forget that we're souls. But Hashem has a way of reminding us. God gives us soul awakening experiences that wakes us up, that we're not just bodies, but souls. Because if I did a survey at Pearson Airport and I asked people getting off the planes, are you a body or your body and a soul? I think most people would say, I'm not just a body, but I'm also a soul. But how many of us live our life like that? Well, it's not like my husband's a rabbi. It's not like I wake up in the morning, I'm a soul, and I go dancing through my day. I'm a person too. Like I'm tired and I'm hungry and you get the kids off to school and it's a very body world. We forget we're souls. But what are these soul awakening experiences? Some of them are extremely positive. My parents for many years owned a cottage in Muskoka in northern part of Ontario. And you could go out onto the lake at night with a cloudless sky. And there's so many stars. It's like a living planetarium. You could touch eternity. A beautiful poem, a song that touches your soul. A vista, mountains, the Rocky Mountains, they lift you. Falling in love, the birth of a baby. These are soul awakening experiences. But then there's heavy things, sickness, accidents, death. Death, for the people who are alive, is a soul awakening experience. Nobody's standing at a funeral thinking, I forgot to take the chicken out of the freezer. What am I going to make for dinner tonight? Everybody is standing at the gravesite thinking, what is life all about? Am I living my life the way I should? What happens after we die? Our soul that lives with God does not want to come into this world. Spoiler alert, we believe in reincarnation, Gilgulim. We believe that souls, neshamas, come back, that there's this transmigration that our souls do. Reincarnation, some of you maybe have a child who is an old soul. Everybody has somebody in the family like, oh, they're an old soul. It's like, they've been here before. That they have wisdom and the way they look, even like as babies, the way they look at the world and see things, there's something going on here. So these souls that come back apparently don't want to come back. Souls that come into this world, why wouldn't a soul want to come into this world? Why? It's not an easy world. It's got to go through the birth canal. Somebody's going to slap its tushy. It's going to make it its diapers. It's going to go through puberty. It's going to fail an exam. Somebody's going to break up with it. You're going to get fired. It's not an easy world. Why would I want to go into a body and face all these challenges and struggles? I'm with God. I'm living as a soul. But God says, no, this soul, this body. And apparently, and this is a very heavy idea, apparently our souls say, okay, if I have to go into this world, we ask God, please give me the challenges I need in order to realize my potential. Because it's not easy to come into this world, and coming back is not a reward. You ideally don't want to come back. You want to get it right the first time. You want to go on to eternity. But for whatever reason, because you didn't complete what you needed to complete, and there's certain rectification that has to happen, So now you have to try again in a different form, in a different gender, in a different religion. You come back as an animal. You can even come back as an inanimate object. I don't understand it. Don't even ask me about it. But sometimes I have seen animals that are for sure reincarnated souls. Not normal. Some of these animals, not normal. So we beg God for certain challenges. If I have to go into this world, give me the challenges that I need, because it really is only through challenge that we dig deep down and we become the people we need to be. I wish it was that when everything's going great, we grow so much. It's actually the opposite, unfortunately. That it's often when things are going great and when money's coming in and when everybody's fine and there's no challenge, that we start to actually drift away from God and our potential. And it's sometimes through challenge and pain that we really grow beyond. So we beg God for certain challenges. Sometimes my husband will come home and say, "How was your day?" And I'll say, "My soul begged for this day." Or my soul begged for this child. Or my soul begged for this fill in the blank, this challenge. We don't grow through our easy kids. We don't grow through our spouse's good qualities. We actually grow through our challenging child and our spouse's challenging qualities. As my friend Adrienne Gold says, you either give birth to your homework or marry it, or sometimes both. Because when we have to deal with challenge, when God brings people into our life who are challenging, what do we have to become? Loving, patient, empathic, kind, patient. Did I say patient? So if I told you I have a loving, patient, supportive, sensitive, loving, patient person for you to meet, you'd say, "Oh my gosh, she sounds great. I'd love to meet her." Get it? The worst thing would be in life is to go through life and not realize our potential. What a waste. If you've ever had a kid, even a very smart kid, and you go to parent-teacher night, the best thing about being an empty nester is no more parent-teacher night. And the teacher says, "Oh, your kid is so smart," but they're not realizing their potential. You feel sick, like they could be so much more if they would just apply themselves. So Hashem knows that we could all be so much more if only we applied ourselves. A life with no tests in school, good luck. Your kid is going to really crack down and learn. It's through tests that we grow. Okay, so now the soul, when does a baby get its soul? Apparently, we're taught 40, it's a Kabbalistic idea, and I believe it's in the Talmud also, that 40 days after conception. 40 days after conception, a baby gets a soul. Somebody actually showed me in a medical journal that a baby in utero is externally gender neutral until approximately 40 days after conception, which makes sense because either you're getting a boy soul or a girl soul. Baby's born, mazel tov, you go through life, challenges, choices. Life is choice. Sometimes we make the right choices, sometimes we make the wrong choices. And there's going to come a time for all of us, and if you've ever been with anybody who took their last breath, where the body stops and the soul goes on to another place. But at first, the soul doesn't leave. I'm sure some of you are familiar with the idea that if you're with somebody and they've taken their last breath, you are not supposed to leave them alone. You're supposed to, until the Chevra Kadisha comes to take your loved one away, a Jewish person is supposed to be in that room. Why? Because the soul's still there. The soul's still there until the finishing of the burial. What? You would think the soul would be so happy. Hip, hip, I'm out of here. Okay, I had to go through this body. I had to go through this challenge. I'm back with God. Why is the soul still there? Because the soul gets attached to the body. We don't believe the soul is good and the body's evil and you battle your whole life. It's a non-Jewish idea. We believe you're a team. But are you the horse or are you the rider? You got to harness the horse, this body, but the soul should be leading the way. That's how we win the race of life. So you lead with your soul, but you need your body. You need your body to do kindness. You need your body to do chesed. You need your body to do mitzvot. You need this body. You work together, and your body houses your soul. What you do to your body affects your soul. That's the idea of kashrut. It's like the first time I know people who grew up religious, and go off, and the first time they eat a Big Mac, they literally are ducking. They think a lightning bolt's coming down. And they tell me, but then nothing happened. Nothing happened on a physical plane. But if I could show you your neshama, if I could show you your soul, every time we speak lashon hara, we gossip. Every time we lie, every time we cheat, every time we don't judge people every time we do something with our body or eat something that's not kosher, every time we do something with our body that is not the right choice, if I could show you your soul and how it impacts your soul, we'd be scared straight. And your body is temporary. Your soul's eternal. Your body is here for a certain amount of time. Your soul never dies. A person's soul, the essence of who they are. When you look into the eyes of somebody, of a loved one, you don't say, wow, smart monkey who evolved so beautifully, great DNA. It's a soul connection. Those soul awakening experiences of beautiful art and nature and music touches your soul. You know that we're not just a bunch of mostly water and some chemicals. And anybody who's lost a loved one knows there are times where, whether they come to you in a dream or you feel their presence at certain times, like you know that this isn't all there is. We know. But often we're not real with it. So what happens? At the time of death, the soul is still there because the soul's attached to the body. It's hard for the soul to leave. So that's why we're there to comfort the soul. We're there to comfort the neshama. And many of you know that if you're in that situation and you're part of the Chevra Kadisha, and you're not allowed to do mitzvot, you can't do a mitzvah in front of the person who has passed away. You can't, because their soul is still there, and it would be painful for the soul that wants to do more. Even a person who wasn't religious now has unbelievable clarity and truth. I wish I could just do one more mitzvah. So that's why even when you go to a cemetery, a man tucks in his tzitzit. He tucks them in so that not to cause pain to the souls, not to cause pain to the person who has passed away before the burial, that they can't do another mitzvah. So there's certain things that you are exempt from doing, and that you're not allowed to do in front of that person who is, again, there was somebody who, in my book, Remember My Soul, I interviewed many people in different walks of life. And there's an audiobook that Remember My Soul, unfortunately, has become a very popular book, as it explains some of the things I'm explaining now and much more. And it has, you learn 30 days. For 30 days, you learn even if you've lost a loved one many years ago, you learn 5 minutes a day in memory of a person. We'll talk about why we do that. But it also has many interviews. And there was an entertainment lawyer who came to the Village Shul that we started in Toronto. And he wasn't observant, and he lost his father. His father died of leukemia. And I'll never forget what he said. He goes, I was with my father when he took his last breath. And I saw that wasn't my father anymore. But the whole room was filled with him. Now, he didn't know what I'm explaining to you now and sharing what Judaism believes, but he felt his father fill the room. But his father's body, he realized that's not my father anymore. So we're there to comfort the soul. And the Chevra Kadisha comes. If anybody here has ever served on a Chevra Kadisha, you don't do it for the fame and fortune. It's a calling. It really is. It's a privilege to help somebody go from one world to the next. If you knew, it would bring you such comfort for those of you who have lost loved ones, the intent that they have, the purity that they have, the care that they have, cleansing the body and preparing the body. I was just at a funeral in Israel. In Israel, there's no caskets. You're wrapped in the shroud and in a man in his tallis, and you just put right into the ground. If you go to the funeral in Israel, you see the shape of the person and their feet. Like, because sometimes if you go to a funeral here and there's a coffin, you're like, or a funeral outside of Israel, you're thinking, are they really in there? It doesn't seem so real. It's just a box. It's so real in Israel. And ideally, that's what you're supposed to do. You came from the earth and you go back to the earth. The simplicity of it, the realness of it, when you're there, it wakes you up to life to see that really is a person. That really is my loved one. Why do we use caskets then? Because the law of the king is law. And it's illegal in most countries not to have a casket. But ideally, use the simplest casket. Simple, simple, simple. And if you ever go to I remember once I was speaking to I think it was a Hadassah group had asked me in Toronto to speak about soul in the afterlife. And I was going on about, and the funeral home, and they'll make you feel like, oh, if I don't spend more, if I loved my loved one, the more you spend, the more you love them. And they sort of guilt you into spending all this money on caskets that really are not, according to Jewish law, ideally what you should use. And I remember I was going on about that. And then there was a woman who put up her hand. She said, excuse me, I work for a Jewish funeral home. And you're exactly right. That's what we do. So it's good to learn about this before you're in the situation. And of course, we do not believe, like, the idea of, unfortunately, in America, in the United States, about half of the people who die in the Jewish world in America, American Jews, about half are being cremated now. And they're not being cremated because they're anti-religious, because it's completely, completely, completely against Jewish law to cremate. They just don't know. They don't know that it's against Jewish law. I don't know what it's like in Toronto. I've never, ever, ever been to a funeral where there was cremation in Toronto. I think Canadian Jews are one generation behind the assimilation of American Jews, but unfortunately they're catching up. But I saw in Florida, in the Jewish newspapers, ads, Jewish cremation. They actually call it Jewish cremation. So people are not doing it because they know, it's because of what they don't know. And it's really, and especially after the Holocaust, when people were burned, for us to choose that. And it's not a simple thing, like if you look into what they do to make that into ash, it's not just with fire, it is the pounding and the things. It's just really, it's a desecration. So why are we careful with the body? Why don't we cremate? Why aren't we supposed to get tattoos? Why can't you just pierce yourself anywhere? Why can't you why can't I jump out of a plane? It's my life. No, it's not. No, it's not. You don't own this body. God gives it to you for a certain amount of time, and you have to give it back. So let's talk about those times. So many years ago, when we were living in Toronto, there was somebody who was young in the community, and they were sick, and we were davening, and I was asking. This is when having a husband who's a rabbi comes in handy. They may forget to take out the garbage, but when you're having a spiritual quandary, they're very handy. And I was asking my husband, who's not only has a lot of knowledge, he has wisdom. He has a lot of wisdom, and he knows how to apply this knowledge to life and to the person in front of them. And I was asking him to explain to me, like, God already knows when a person's time, and like, why are we davening, and they're so young, et cetera, et cetera. And you see good people, and they seem to have so much suffering in life, and maybe they don't have a long life. And then you see people are not so good and they have a long life. So my husband shared the following. He said, when you come into this world, you come into this world with little backpacks on your back, metaphorically. And there's a number on the backpack. Some say 7, some say 37, some say 107. Those are the amount of years that God has assigned this neshama in this world for this reason. For what the reason, again, this for the migration of this neshama of the soul and its need to realize its potential. But we don't know the original number, and the number can change. It's clear in Tanakh that the years are added to people's lives or taken away for whatever reason. So when you go to the Shiva of somebody who died and they were 87, so what do you say to the mourners? At least he lived a long life. Maybe he had 107 on his backpack. For whatever reason, God took some years away. And you go to the Shiva of somebody who's 37 and everybody, they died so young. Maybe they had 7 on their backpack. And for whatever reason, they merited 30 more years. It's very, very painful for me to hear people or to go to funerals, and I've been to many, where they say that it's not fair. It's not fair. They died so young. It's not fair. For whatever reason, the way they died or the amount of years, it's not fair. So what are you saying to God? You clearly made a mistake. That's so not nice of you. You're so mean. Fair? Do you know in Hebrew, there's no word for fair? They literally say, zelo fair. This is not fair. They don't have a Hebrew word for fair. Fair? Everybody gets what they're supposed to get at the time they get it, in the amount they get it. Whether we're talking about money or challenges or blessings. God, we are human beings living in the present, dwelling on the past and worrying about the future because we're bound by time. God is not bound by time. God sees past, present, and future in one glance. He sees where we came from. He sees where we are. And because he's not bound by time, God even sees where we're going. It's not fair. So that's us. I'm not saying it's easy. I'm not saying that when there's challenge or a person dies young, it doesn't rip your heart out. It rips your heart out. But if you know that there is a God, and somehow this is for my good, for the good of the world, and it's a loving God, our Rabbi Noah Weinberg Zatzal, who just had his 14th yard site, was last week. So Reb Noach said, better to be angry at God than not to believe in him. So it's okay to be angry at God. God's got big shoulders. He can take it. But when we're angry at God, Rabbi Mati Berger points out, not only do we believe in God, we believe in a loving God. Because why would we be angry? If it's a fickle God, or if there's no God, there's nothing to be angry at. And if it's a fickle God, okay, he was in a bad mood that day. But we know there is a God, and we know it's a loving God, and that somehow this is for my good. And just like when I was growing up, and back then, if you did something wrong, you got a potch from your parent. In our house, it was from our father. And when they would say, this hurts me more than it hurts you, when you're a kid, you're thinking, yeah, right, it hurts you. But you know that it does hurt you if you have to cause pain to your children, and you know it's for their good. When you say no to your kid and your kid goes, I hate you, or when you take something, when you have to cause pain to your child, you're doing it because you love them and you don't want them to mess up. You don't want them to waste their life. And it does hurt. So where does the neshama go? Now the neshama leaves this world until the burial, until Kaddish is said and the earth covers, because Kaddish is said After the earth covers the casket, not the whole burial, but after the earth covers the casket, that's when Kaddish is said, because that's when the neshama leaves this world. And Shiva begins. I'm sure many of you have been to non-traditional Shivas, and I grew up with them, and many people I know have non-traditional Shivas because they're not coming from a traditional home. And if you didn't know it was a Shiva and you just, went in to use the phone because you saw there was action there and you would run out of gas, and if you didn't know it was a Shiva and you saw the food and heard the laughter and all the merriment, you would think, oh, I'm at a birthday party. I'm at a simcha. Because Shivas have become a travesty of really what they're supposed to be. But again, people are not doing it that way because of what they know. It's because of what they don't know. I remember in Toronto, somebody I know, her mother had passed away, and I remember coming to pay a Shiva call, and I couldn't find her. She was in the kitchen, like organizing the waitresses for all the food coming out. I said to her, you don't have to do this. She said, I know, but everybody expects me to. And she told me she was only going to sit Shiva for 3 days. And back then I was this like junior Rebbitzin, and I didn't have the confidence to convince her otherwise. Because Shiva comes from Sheva, and it's like the whole idea of the completion in this world. And I told her, like, really, like, it's supposed to be 7 days. And she goes, why would I want to host a party for 7 days when I just had the most painful loss of my life? Why would I want to do that? After she went back, 3 days, her brother goes back to the States, and she went back to her life, and her husband goes back to work. And a few weeks later, she called me up. She said, Lori, I never mourned my mother. Even before I became observant, I remember going to non-Jewish funerals and Jewish funerals. And I remember thinking, like, Jews have it all together when it comes to death and mourning. We have very quick burials. Why do we bury quickly? In Israel, you're literally buried the same day. If you die, you're buried that night. Because we want the soul to go on to the next world. We don't want to hold the soul back. We don't have open caskets, and we don't embalm. Do you ever go to one of those open caskety things? You stand in line and you get to the front and you look down. What does everybody say? She looks good. They make them up as if they look alive. Why don't we do that? Because they're dead. We're not pretending to hold on to the body. We don't put on clothes and makeup on a person and their hair. We don't bury them with things. Because that's not my loved one. That's the body that housed the soul, and we needed that body. And the body has sanctity, so because it housed the soul, so we're careful with the body. But that's not who they are. We're doing everything we can do now for their neshama, just like this is an aliyah neshama. And everything we do, whether we give tzedakah in their name, or we sponsor a book in their name, or we name children after them, like this is all, as we said at the beginning, an aliyah neshama. It should be an elevation of their soul. We want their soul to climb higher and higher and higher, and to go before God in the greatest way. So the soul can go to one of two places after it leaves this world. Let's do hell first. You'll be hopefully comforted to know that the longest you can be in hell is a Jewish year. You don't have to be there at all. You can bypass it and go straight to heaven. But you could be there for a second, but the longest time you could be there for is a Jewish year. And that's why we say Kaddish for 11 months, not for the full year, because we can never imagine the person we're saying Kaddish for needs the merit of that Kaddish, that they would be there. How do you bypass it? You take care of your mistakes here, because what is hell? What is Gehenna? It's not pitchforks and devils. I asked Reb Noah, he said, Gehenna is a hospital for the soul. We have hospitals in your city. You're glad they're there, but you never want to use them. But if you needed one, aren't you glad it's there? And it's not going to be pretty if you check in. It's going to be painful, but it's out of God's kindness and His chesed that if you didn't take care of your mistakes here, you have to take care of them there. How do you take care of your mistakes here? Tshuva. It's a whole different talk on tshuva and how we do tshuva, but you take care of your mistakes here. You say you're sorry here. You make good here. As hard as it's going to be to go to people and ask their forgiveness or to say, I'm sorry here, it's going to be much more painful there. Take care of your mistakes here. So Reb Noach said that there'll be great pain in Gehenna. What's the pain? What I could have been, what I could have done, what I should have been, what I should have done, what I would have been, what I would have done. Because apparently it's a world of shame. I remember when they first told me that it's a world of shame, I'm like, oh, okay. No, Lord. Shame. Have you ever done something in your life and you were ashamed? You felt the pain of that. If somebody is caught as an obscene phone caller or a peeping Tom, what do? They throw you into jail. They take away your shoelaces and they give you a spoon to eat with. Because shame is so heavy, you would take your own life. That's how heavy shame is. So hopefully you bypassed it. You took care of your mistakes here. Or you were there for just a short amount of time. Or the maximum of Jewish year. And then you get to go on to heaven. So what's going on in heaven? What's going on? As much as Gehenna is an unbelievable, unbelievable world of pain, heaven, it's pleasure. It's unbelievable pleasure. Well, what kind of pleasure? In this world, I went on vacation, I had fun. I ate ice cream, yum, yum, yum. Okay, like we do things and we get pleasure. What's the pleasure in the next world? It's soul-filled pleasure. You know the term nachas? Did you ever try to like translate that to your non-Jewish housekeeper? What's this nachos thing? So how would you translate nachas? You would say, oh, nachas, oh, that's like pleasure, but it's deeper. It's joy, but it's more. It's happiness, but it's pride, it's nachas. It's soul-filled pleasure. When you find out your kid did a kindness for somebody and they didn't even tell you, and you hear about it, your whole heart and your soul are filled with nachas. It's so. What would you trade? What amount of money would you take to trade away your nachas? It's priceless. So it's soul-filled pleasure. The analogy I heard, which really touched me and made sense to me, is that the next world is like a theater. And we're taught that every Jew who does even one mitzvah, l'shem shamayim, for the sake of heaven, has a seat in the theater. God is center stage. The closer you are, the closer proximity you are to God, the greater the pleasure. Because all those soul-filled pleasures that we talked about, of mountaintops and falling in love and a baby being born, those are like brushes with transcendence, brushes with eternity, brushes with God. You want to be as close as possible to the ultimate pleasure that you got a taste of in this world. So every Jew has a seat. But there's a seat and there's a seat. Some people are front row center. Some people have third balcony. Some people have obstructed view. And some people are scalping tickets in the hall. But we're all in the theater. What does your seat depend upon? The choices we've made in this world. So imagine I did my best here. Please God, I lived to 120. And then I go to the next world and I'm taught Lori Palatnik, PPP. Oh, L20, here you go. Not so close, not so far away. Is that it? I'm in L20, a certain proximity. Your row can change. How can your row change? because of the people who remember you in this world. And the choices that the people, whether it's your students or the people you helped or your children or your grandchildren, like they only exist, their life changed because you lived, and their life changed, hopefully for the better, because you died. That they become greater people, that inspires them to do more, that they take on your good qualities and try to put it into this world, and they give tzedakah and all the things they do. That isn't only a beautiful thing for this world, that's a merit to you. So you move, the neshamas in the next world don't know that it's a cold, rainy, overcast day in Jerusalem today. They don't know the weather report, but they know when mitzvahs happen. They come to the chuppahs. They come to the bar mitzvahs, and they come to the bris and the bat mitzvah, and they come to the siddur parties. They know, they're attracted to mitzvah. So is that it? We're hanging out in Shemayim, bumping up rows. There is something else that happens, but we don't have time to talk about it. Maybe another time. That's a different world when we talk about Mashiach and Techiyat HaMesim, the resurrection of the dead, when bodies and souls come back together. We can talk about that another time. We're sort of out of time. So what do I want to leave you with? I want to leave you with understanding. Rav Noach taught us that happiness is taking pleasure in what you have. It's very present, counting your blessings. But simcha, joy, he said, is knowing there'll be future happiness. And no matter what we're going through in life, even when we're sitting Shiva, he says you have to have one track on simcha, knowing there'll be future happiness. He said if the Jewish people hadn't always had one track on simcha, we would have given up a long time ago. So why do we call a bris a simcha? Why do we call a bar mitzvah, bat mitzvah a simcha? Why do we call a wedding a simcha? Why? It's not what's happening right now. It's very future oriented. It's the potential of this newborn. It's now I'm responsible for the mitzvot and what can be. It's the uniting of a man and a woman and a new family and a Jewish home that they're going to, God willing, build. It's very future oriented. Even women, it says, what's simcha on Yantif for a man? It says it's red meat and wine. But what's simcha for a woman? New clothing. New clothing. It's not the act of shopping for that new clothes that brings that happiness. It's actually very future oriented. What I'm going to look like at the event that I'm going to wear this at, what my husband's going to think when he sees me. Like, it's very future oriented. So Reb Noach said that when we wake up in the morning, we have to plug into simcha. Don't wait for it to happen. You have to look for it. You have to do action to put yourself into simcha. Knowing no matter what is going on in our lives, no matter what the challenges and what the pain, we have to know there will be future happiness. So go to the simchas. People sometimes will make an effort to go to the funeral or a shiva, but they'll be like, oh, whatever, I'm just another guest at this simcha. No. Every simcha you go to brings more simcha into this world because it brings simcha to the people who are celebrating. So may we be blessed to live our lives with simcha, because we were not punished in the Torah because we didn't serve God. It says we were punished because we didn't serve him, but simcha. God doesn't need a bunch of miserable people doing his mitzvahs. Don't do God any favors. He wants us to take tremendous pleasure in this world and in life, even with the challenges. Because if you know and you live with the knowledge and the reality that God loves us more than we love our kids, more than our parents ever loved us. God gives us these relationships to give us an inkling of what it means that he loves us. And if we lived with that reality, Reb Noach said, and 99% of the time, if I brought somebody to Reb Noach for a bracha, 99% of the time he would give the same bracha. You should always know that God loves you. So ladies, may you only have nachas from your children in this world, your students, your friends, your colleagues, everybody who you help and you give to. And may Hashem only have nachas from us. Thank you.
Amen.
Lori, thank you. Lori, thank you so much. That was so profound and prolific on the human condition and who we are as neshamas. That was so beautiful. Mom, it should be an Elias neshama, Aaron Moshe, Ben Tzvi, and I can't thank you enough, really. That was
Amen.
It was so gorgeous, Lori. I just want to tell you, we should be zoche, not only to see the beauty of the glory of every single neshama in their glory of who people really are, but to also see that in ourselves. And through that, that will bring real simcha. That will mamish bring the greatest level of simcha. So
amen. I do want to say that I would,
wow.
I wanted, the last thing I want to share with you is everything I told you is not going to change the way you die. But hopefully,
Right.
if we really take it in,
Change the way we live.
The way we live.
Amen. Wow. So beautiful. Thank you so much. I
you
think
for
everybody's
this process.
probably crying. So thank you so
I just,
much, really.
Naomi, I have to interject because Lori,
please.
I thank you from the bottom of my heart. And she's speaking the day after, the night, the morning, the afternoon after her son's wedding.
Wow.
And Mazel Tov. So
Mazel
from
Tov.
simcha, like you're bringing your simcha into this occasion, honestly, this memorial, and your special neshama sharing your words of wisdom with us. And it was so share it how this all unfolded. And thank you from the depths of my heart. Like you have no idea how much meaningful this is to me. And thank you. You were on the Zoom Shiva with us. And thank you for being part of this journey as well and bringing an Elias neshama to our dear Aaron Moshe Ben Tzvi. Aleya.
Amen.
Thank you.
Amen. Amen, Leah.
Can I ask a question? Can you
Sure.
We only have one question. One question, because we have to get off, but go ahead.
Okay, Lori, you spoke beautifully. Kol hakavod.
Thank you.
I'm suffering. I just lost my husband about a year ago.